So welcome back, guys, to Rubberneck Garage. Like I told you yesterday, I actually made this video with my Capri, affectionately known as Cap, a two-parter. So that's what we're going to continue with, part 2. I hope you're having a great day. Enjoy part 2. So a fuel pump is just a motor. So since I know it's a motor, I know that it can be regulated. It can be voltage regulated. And if you can voltage regulate a brush motor, now brushless are different. This is a brush one. So a brush motor, I can deregulate it, and I can turn it to whatever voltage I want it to, and then it will spin at a certain speed, and then it will provide amount of pressure at a certain speed. So I got a $10 voltage regulator. Now this voltage regulator is dialed, and as you can see, what I did was I took that and I ran a fuel pressure gauge right there, and I ran it, and then I turned this at different increments, and that gave me what my fuel pressure is at different points. 30 psi, 20 psi, 10 psi. I never go above 30 psi, and the reason is that'll kill my one-to-one regulator, and that'll kill this gauge. And you know how I know that? Because I did it accidentally. I turned that dial up, and it literally threw that needle to the freaking moon, killed that, and then killed my old regulator. So I don't do that anymore. So that's how you deregulate a fuel pump, and now it works just like any of the AEM fuel pumps or anything else. And I can control the pressure, and I know that it's not gonna overwhelm my carburetor, and I'm not gonna flood out, and I'm not gonna, it's gonna be, everything's gonna work the way it's supposed to. Here's the other thing. Brass floats. Brass floats don't like boost. They crush under real boost. Now here's the thing. Old brass floats are really susceptible to crushing under boost. New brass floats, like you replace them with some brand new stuff, don't seem to be. I had the original set of brass floats in there. It saw a boost. It just started, I had a hard time tuning it, and because I had a hard time tuning it, I figured something was going on. I was getting too much fuel, or I was getting too little fuel. It felt like too much fuel. So I opened up that carburetor, and those floats were crushed. Like a tin can, they were crushed. So I put new floats in it, and I haven't replaced them since, and I've pulled that carburetor apart several times, and they handle the boost. So I don't know if they use different brass now, if the metal compound is a little bit different, but it works really, really well, and I haven't had to do anything for it. If you do the conversion, the blow-through conversion on an Edelbrock carburetor, some recommend that you go to a polyurethane or a urethane, I can't remember, float. The thing about that is they don't make them for these. They don't exist. They make them for Holleys, which a lot of guys do blow-through conversions on Holleys. I love Edelbrocks, and I know Holley guys are going to go, what are you talking about? Holleys are the best. Edelbrocks to me are so simple to work on. I can literally sit in a parking lot, take that thing apart, put new jet, put new springs, put new needles, do all that, and not even think about it. And I've worked on Holleys, and they are not that easy to work on, in my opinion. In the middle of parking lot, there's too many pieces that can get lost and fall on the ground and do whatever. This car, I've done it on the car. Now other people say, oh, you never do that on the car because if you drop it down and da-da-da-da, kill your motor, this and that. I haven't had that issue, knock on wood. But I really like, but so what some guys will do is they actually graft the original brass ones to some polyurethane ones, or to some urethane ones, and there's a Holley number that the dimensions will actually fit inside the bowls for these, so the floats will actually, they're almost identical to the brass floats, and you can graft it and do all this. And the guy who did the article on converting these to blow through, the Edelbrocks to blow through, actually did that. And again, that's why I didn't do it, because I didn't, like I said, I'm seeing at the max, I've seen 6 psi on this car, and I haven't crushed my float. That may change in the future. The other thing I have is an air to fuel ratio gauge. This is an O-meter. It's a WW, I think it's Moats or Moates.net. I don't even know if they exist anymore. And it's connected to a Lambda, I think Lambda 2 reader. This is cool. I love the digital reading, and it's super accurate. And this is how I tune this car. 100% how I tune this car. I literally change things out. I get in the car. I drive it conservatively. I drive it through the power band. I drive it at idle. I drive it at full. I do everything very, very slowly. And if I start seeing air to fuel ratios that I don't like, I just shut it down. And then I go back and I change the jets, and I up either the secondaries or the primaries, or do whatever I need to do, and then I come back and I do the same thing. If you're going to tune a carbureted car, I don't even care if it's not boosted, you need an air to fuel ratio gauge of some sort. This one's ran, it's an O2 sensor that's actually ran. I welded a bung to the exhaust that's on this car and it works perfectly. So that's how I tune this car. The other things I have boost gauges. One actually runs pre-carb and one runs post-carb. So this one's ran into the actual manifold and this is ran into the actual hat. I went with a cheapy RPM gauge because this one, through this little itty bitty steering wheel, which I changed to because it was easier to control when I went to the track. It wasn't, because this has a little bit play in it, and so it was just an easy fix to actually keep the car very, very straight and know exactly where it was. So I had a hard time seeing the RPM, so I had to do something else that allowed me to see RPMs, because that's all that's important when you're actually drag racing. This car has seen 12.2 at 118 miles per hour on the track. Now that may not seem screaming fast compared to the supercars and big, big motor turbo cars out there. The price tag for this entire build with everything, and it's funny because that carburetor hat, that's like my biggest expense, and it's because I used to have, I kid you not, a Wolfgang Puck bowl that I welded and converted into a carb hat because the dimensions were right to sit on that carburetor. So I switched it out to the Spectre because it's way easier. I had boost leak problems with the other one, and it was a freaking mixing bowl. So it was worth the I think $115 that I paid. So all told, and I have slicks for this car that sit right there. Slicks, I have another set of wheels. Everything that I've done to this car, every single thing. I've done some suspension components. I've got some traction bars. I've got a K-member brace. All that is $2,950. That is how much I have in this car, because I did everything super, super cheap, and I did everything super, super experimentally to see if it would work, and it all worked very well. Now, what are the future plans for this car? Well, there's one thing I want to do, and like I said, I love the sound of a supercharger. I love it. Not gonna get rid of it. It's the best sound in the world. This thing screams. This thing turns heads like nobody's business. I get talked to about it. If you watch one of my previous videos, I stopped by a guy because it's like, oh my gosh, I heard that thing coming down the road. I have to talk to you about it. The supercharger is going nowhere on this car. So what do? Like I said, it sees 4 pounds of boost at the maximum point. Sees about 6 in the beginning. I want probably to see more boost, but when you do that, everything else is fine. I think the only issue I'll run into are those brass floats. I think they may compress, but I don't care because I want to do something cool. So the future plan for this car is compound boosting. And anyone who doesn't know what compound boosting is, what I'm going to do is that supercharger, it's an M90, doesn't push a ton of air at high RPM. They're known for that, especially on big motors. This is a 5.0. Someone's gonna argue and go, 302s aren't 5.0s, they're 4.9s. I don't care. It's listed a 5.0. They've always called it a 5.0. This 5.0 at full gat consumes way too much air for the little supercharger. So I pretty much shift at 5,000 RPM. That's pretty much where this thing kind of stops. And really that's where the naturally aspirated 5.0s kind of stop making power. That 5,000, that 5,200, that's where a lot of guys kind of, they've got a 6,000 RPM red line, but most guys with these Fox bodies and stuff, it never sees it. What I'm gonna do is I'm going to compound boost it with a turbocharger, a big turbocharger. And what's cool about compound boosting is this is all low end power, low end torque. Literally, I touch the throttle on this thing. If I hammer this thing, the tires shred. I mean, it breaks it loose. I really can't off the line because the thing just breaks loose because it's all low end torque. Now my high end, I don't have anything. So what I do is I add a big turbo, and then I use this supercharger and I run it, and this is all theoretically because I haven't done it yet, and I run it to a large turbocharger that sits right about there. How do I know it sits there? Because they build a single turbocharger kit for these motors specifically. And what it is it connects the two headers. There's a pipe that runs pretty much under the front. It comes through. Turbo sits right here. Now what I'll do is this. I will clock that turbo backwards. So the air intake actually faces this pipe. When it faces that pipe, I will run it directly into that large turbocharger. At that point, what I'll do is I'll run that outlet into this carburetor. So it'll be a real short system. It'll basically go here to a turbocharger, clocked, and it'll probably go on a bend and basically face like right here. Issues that I run into: hood clearance, I don't have any. Battery location, Has to happen. That battery, pretty much, I think that turbocharger almost sits like where that battery is. So battery location. So that's what I need to do. I would need to relocate the battery to the trunk. Not a big deal. They sell the kits. It's pretty awesome. So I would do that. Run my oil lines, which aren't a big deal on this. So some guys, it's all, you just have to be careful about when you run your drain line, because your drain line, it's gravity fed. You can scavenge pump it and make it not as gravity fed. But I don't really want to go into my oil pan, honestly. I actually want to go into the valve cover. That's where I want to drop my drainage line. And so that being said, that turbo needs to sit probably pretty high. And with that turbo sitting high, it's going to come through the hood. Now this hood is not unmolested. As you can see, there are a couple things going on here. And one of those things is, this is a top-mounted intercooler, just like a Subaru. And I use that idea strictly from them. And I used it because it was a pretty simple way to pipe this. And like I said, this car is all about being cheap. It's not cheap to run a ton of piping to the front, big intercooler, all that stuff. So I ran a really small intercooler. It's a 2.5 inch. It's actually, I had it laying around. It was on a project that I never got to. For a Honda, and so it's a Honda intercooler, or it's just it says JDM on it. Everybody knows it's just an eBay intercooler. So that's ran. So I had to get airflow into that, hence the Subaru style hood scoop. Now it actually flows air into that intercooler. So everything I have, all my scoops are functional. This isn't just a guy who decided, oh, that's not what this is. These are all functional. This was cut in order to clear this. These louvers actually go to the air intake, which sits down there. It actually has a deflector shield. It sounds super sci-fi. It has a deflector shield. It actually just has a shield, because what I was having a problem with is there's no fender liner in there. So when it would rain, it would actually soak that filter and this car would die out. And then I'd have to put the filter here and pull it apart and then drive it with the filter inside here. So I just did this really cool shield right there, and it actually keeps everything dry. It gets a little bit dirty, but nothing crazy, and the car runs just fine in the rain. The hood already has clearance issues. I'm going to be cutting probably more of that and this turbo for no other purpose other than super cheap, experimental. The idea of this car in the first place is probably going to poke way out of this hood, and that's fine. Like I said, this hood's not unmolested. I mean, I've got bolt spacers to bring this thing up so that it clears that intercooler. One other thing that you'll see, or you'll probably notice, is these. So these are oil catch cans. Superchargers, this thing pushes, it gets a little blow by. Superchargers are pretty notorious for causing some blow by, some oil blow by. You'll see it in a lot of videos where guys have cans, and if they don't, you'll see a lot of smoke coming out of actually breather valves and things like that. I have these because I was having that issue, and I could actually, the way I knew I was having that issue is I could smell it as soon as it was under real full boost or full load. Those are two little cheapy eBay catch cans. I think they were 15 bucks a piece or something. Nothing on this blow-off valve, and a lot of guys don't go with blow-off valves, but the problem with not going on a blow-off valve with this combination and these floats, and I didn't even mention that's when I probably crushed my first float. If you don't relieve that back pressure when this thing's sitting at idle, and you're not under full, you're not under full scat, like you're not freaking going, it's a lot of back pressure. Like, I think that supercharger at idle without that blow-off valve sits at like 15 psi or something nuts. So it'll crush those flows. So you have to have something that releases that pressure. So that's like a $15 blow-off valve, and I have like 2 or 3 of them because I thought I was having blow-off valve issues because I was losing boost. And what I realized was I was actually having belt slip. And the reason why I was having belt slip was this originally just kind of went up and over and down. And so what I did to remedy that is this pulley, this idler pulley, is actually, that's off of a 750 IL BMW. Now the pulley itself was changed out. The original one was kind of one of these plastic deals right there. So I changed it out to a metal one, and it's a little bigger, a little beefier, and it gave me a little more hug on that actual on the actual pulley on the supercharger. That pulley, so this pulley is not stock. The original pulley made no boost at all. It was way too big, and it was built again for like a 3.8 Bonneville. So this pulley is actually an eBay special. This guy makes them. He makes a kit so you can switch them out. That one is this one's a 2.4 pulley, and I got a 2.3, but I can't. I don't have a machining shop that can hone down this snout enough to get a 2.3 on it. And to be honest with you, I don't know if I would benefit from a 2.3 on this particular setup, because these Eaton M90 superchargers get hot. So hot that they're affectionately called Heaton superchargers. And when you run that kind of RPM, when you run, I mean, you're running thousands and thousands of RPM as the pulleys get smaller, you're heating this up so quickly. This thing already gets really, really hot with the 2.4, and even with this air-to-air intercooler, it's still really hot. My only saving grace is a couple things. Carburetors actually drop temperature. They're not like EFI systems or direct systems. You actually get cooling effect between the top of the carburetors to the hat down to the intake itself. This intake's a high-rise intake, or it's a medium-rise, high-rise, almost slash high-rise intake. I would call it more of a high, I wouldn't call it a high-rise intake. I think of big high-rise intakes. This is more of a medium. It's super cheap. I think this one was from something products. I mean, I don't even remember what the name of the company is. It's another eBay thing. That's one of the only other upgrades, and I think that intake cost me $100. The ignition system, pretty much stock. I upped the coil, and then the wires, everything else is stock. That's an issue I'm running into right now, is I'm actually getting breakup. I'm starting to get breakup at higher RPMs, and I switched out I thought it was potentially, thought I was getting spark blowout, so I thought I was actually boosting to the point where I was blowing the spark and the gap was too high on my spark plugs. And then when it's boosted, you know, you adjust your gap to your boost, and so when you get really, really high boost, you have to really close that gap so that you don't get blowout. So I thought I had that, so I closed the gap, put new spark plugs in. It corrected a little bit, and it corrected it just a little bit enough, and I cannot close the gap anymore, else I'm like, basically, I lose all effect of the spark. So I think the wires are bad, and it would make sense because I think those wires are probably 10, 15 years old. I think they were on this car when that original conversion was done. So I do have a set of wires in that box right there that are going to go on this that have a little bit more millimeter diameter. Again, very cheapy special stuff to keep this thing in the spirit of being cheap. So that's going to get done. The ignition's all the same. What haven't I covered? What on this car is weird, or weirder than what I've explained? Oh, you see this blanket right here? That's to keep the airflow directed to the actual air-to-air. That is off of a garage door. That is a garage door sill. That is a lower sill cut and fashioned on that. The reason why I did that was I was just getting passed over. What was happening was the air would go into that large scoop, and then it would just go up the windshield, and I wasn't getting any actually down through the intercooler. So I did that, and that changed that. What else? It does have different headers on it. It has a set of shorty headers, but those will be gone when I compound boost it. But it does give it a little better flow, so I did change those out because the original ones were they're just really, really restrictive. So those are different. What else? That's pretty much it. I mean, the power steering pulley is different. Everything's been a little bit beefed up because this puts a little more strain on some of the components. Here's one thing. So problems I ran into: belt tossing, belt shredding. Got past those problems. Started killing pulleys, actually cracking pulleys because the pressure that was being put on it. So I don't know how many of those water pump pulleys I've gone through. 4, maybe 5. This one has been on for over a year, and it's been doing really, really well. And the reason is I actually had a stock one, and the stock one separated. The welds came apart. So I went to an aftermarket, and it was a bigger diameter, because if you've ever tried to build these 5.0s, the different years, the diameters of the pulleys, and depending on what options are on it and air conditioning and everything else, it changes that pulley. So I finally found a stock pulley that was built for this car specifically, for this one with these options and air conditioning, and it's worked perfect. The other thing is, you may wonder how this bracket was actually configured or how I fit it. It's built on the original bracket system. So it's actually built off of the air conditioning bracket that came on this car originally. So I don't know if you can see it, but actually the mounting points and everything I welded to, that's all factory brackets. If it's not broke, don't fix it. And so I didn't change any of the original mounting, and then I beefed everything up from there. I regusseted everything, and then made it just more beefy and stronger, then added this secondary brace that goes from that point down to there. And as you can see, that's where the actual BMW pulley is mounted to as well. So what parts are on this car? Well, here's what I'll tell you: everything. And I mentioned in another video, and this video is going to get really long, and I apologize for that. So I mentioned in another video that this car was built for a TV show. That's true and partially not true. It's true in the fact that once I decided to go on this TV show, I kind of ramped it up into building it for that TV show. The not true part is I'd already built this car. It was just built super cheap for my for my personal taste, not for the show's taste. It just happened to work out that this car was well under $3,000, which the TV show that I was in was the $3,000 Hoopty Challenge. It was on Facebook. It was like a Facebook TV show. The guys from Roadkill are the ones who actually went ahead and promoted that show. Hey guys, so I started editing this video, and what happened was, I guess one of the files was corrupted, so it cut off right when I started talking about the TV show that the Capri Cap was actually in. So what had happened was my car was chosen, and it was chosen for a class called the Frankenstein class, and the Frankenstein class consisted of any car that had multiple parts or multiple pieces from other cars that made it whole. So it was perfect for that class. It got picked. It was the first one picked by the host, and then when it actually came time to drag race, what you do is you parade your vehicles in front of an audience, and the audience then judges whether that car is worth less than $3,000. When my car got up to the judging block, the audience decided that my car was not worth less than $3,000. So unfortunately, I did not get a run in that show. But if you watch the show, you'll see my car get picked. You'll see it several times. But that's what happened in the end, was I wasn't allowed to run it because no one believed that I spent less than $3,000. And I'm here to attest that absolutely this car cost less than $3,000 for me to build. So here's the deal. That's Cap in a nutshell. I love this car. It proves that you can build a car on a budget, and you can do things that people don't think are really either possible or probable to do, make them work. And you can re-engineer a vehicle and make it really, really fast by doing so, and anybody can do it. Absolutely anybody can do it. So here's what I'll tell you. Find a project, whatever that project is, cheap, expensive, I don't care what, but build it, make it your own, turn heads every single day with it. And other than that, guys, have a wonderful day, and I'll see you on the next episode.